Welcome to the Crafty Mini. Now, those who've been watching the channel know I've been doing a lot of the Trench Crusade content at the moment, working on some of my showcases and armies and different techniques of painting and things. I've finally finished my Trench Pilgrims. Now, instead of doing a standard how I painted them video, because I'm using a lot of the techniques that you've seen before on other videos on the channel, instead I thought I'd go into sort of like the design process and why it is I like this faction over all the others. And for me personally, when there's something that I really enjoy and I'm getting into, I'll create like a narrative structure behind them as well. So we're going to showcase the minis as we go, and I'll share the backstory that I've sort of come up with, because I want to do the designs and the miniatures for the game itself are absolutely beautiful. They've really hit that grimdark sort of aesthetic, and I think this is one of the reasons why it's doing so well at the moment. But for me, I want something that's a bit unique to me, and how I perceive this faction to be. So we'll get into that in a moment. First of all, just a couple of things. The paint job, is it the best I can do? No, but I think it nails the style and the theme that I'm going for. And sometimes I think that's important for us as miniature painters and hobbyists. We need to. It doesn't have to be a display piece for every single miniature. When you look at these all together, they all fit. You can tell they're all part of the same unit within the same world. There's only little dashes of colour. It's very dark and grotesque. You know, it's very like suppressive, as it should be with the setting for anyone who's followed Grimdark. But right, we're going to get into Trench Pilgrims themselves briefly, and then we'll look at the actual army showcase in a moment. Right, so the Trench Pilgrims themselves they're sort of described as this sort of disorganised group of Christians who have become militants and taken it upon themselves basically the holy quest to defend Christendom from the forces of Satan and the demons and all such. There's a lot more in the lore that you can obviously go in and have a look at, and it's got a really nice aesthetic and a cool sort of narrative built behind it as well. Now, one of the things I wanted to lean in is the Black Grail, which is this disease that's been spread by one of the sort of shoot-off factions from the evil demon side. And so I came with the idea. So my particular Trench Pilgrims, so they haven't got the big pyramid helmets that you see on most of them. Instead, this is almost like, for those of you who've played 40k, a Schaefer's Last Chances type thing. And these are all the poor, wretched souls who have been infected by this Black Grail, and it's basically they get given the suicide missions because they're going to be sitting and rotting anyway. So instead, the military sort of head behind the new Antioch and the Trench Pilgrims basically send these people out, and they go and do the most dangerous of missions because they are very expendable. They don't want them anywhere near the rank and file soldiers where they could be spreading this disease. So instead, they kit them up with bare bones and send them out. So that being said, we're going to look at the miniatures now, and I'll go through sort of like my little narrative backstory I've come up with, some of the characters, and then like the main sort of troop choices as a whole, and we'll go from there. So as I said, these are the rank and file, the average people who've decided to take upon themselves and go out and fight for Christendom. Now, I've always liked the idea of the underdog, and that's pretty much what this faction is. They're not the best trained, they're not the best equipped. They're not necessarily the fittest and the brightest, but they're taking it upon themselves to do a good thing and fighting the forces of evil. So that was sort of the basis of the narrative, and then as we go through now, I'll show you the characters and sort of what I've come up with for each of them, and then the actual sort of troops themselves. And I recommend if there's something as a game you're enjoying, and especially something like this, whether it's an individual character or an entire force, come up with a narrative, because you'd be surprised how much fun you can have with it. And it can actually help when it comes to designing sort of the paint scheme, and because a lot of this stuff on here as well, you might have seen in previous photos on posts in my channel, have all been kit bashed as well to some extent. So it's helped actually the design process and then the paint job behind them, and you'd be surprised how much you can get out of just coming up with a little bit of backstory. But here goes. So Captain Sorensen, I wanted, so you'll notice with the names this is a multinational force, because I like the idea that these poor souls are coming from anywhere and everywhere. So with Captain Sorensen in particular, I wanted it so he's suffered from the Black Grail, but he's also got previous war wounds, so there's like, you know, battle damage on his arms and things, the fact that he's lost an arm. And he's wearing that sort of lobster type armour that you see in a lot of World War I photographs. And the idea that the Black Plague is slowly, you know, it's killing him, but with the mask and the other bits that he's got, it's just keeping him alive long enough for him to lead these men into battle and hopefully save their souls and you know, go forward. And they will do, you know, he will lead the men into the most dangerous missions, and he leads by example. So he's quite an imposing figure. So Father Whitlow, he's a priest from the south of England. Now he saw that all these, you know, these normal people are going up and serving and just going off on their own to fight the forces of evil, and he decided, he was given a calling, some say, and it's his divine right to make sure that these men and women who go forward and fight this evil, that aren't part of these big military forces and things, that they, you know, they deserve blessings and have someone who's constantly reading the faith to them and keeping their spirits up, and he's taken it upon himself to do that. Now with the actual miniature and the few things I added to him, I decided he's the only character that doesn't suffer from the Black Grail in this unit, because he's fully encased. He's faced with this rebreather suit that he takes, so basically he can do this divine quest that he's been given for as long as possible. So Sister Mary was originally a nun from Italy. She was working in the field hospitals behind the front lines, and unfortunately has been infected with the Black Grail, and so has obviously been shunned out of normal areas because they don't want the infection spreading. And so she's taken it upon herself now to join the wretched and basically tend to their wounds, try and make them as comfortable as possible. I've got it in the sort of the backstory that she's actually the most inflicted, but for some strange reason it hasn't taken her life yet, and there's this whole idea that it's because she's got like a divine blessing or something. Also, if one of the men are on the deathbed, she will inflict the killing blow to make sure that their passing is as painless as possible. Communicant de Pius. So firstly, the name is a little nod to someone else. So the idea was he was one of the wretched who was basically about to die, and Father Whitlow administered the Eucharist to him, and so by imbibing the flesh and blood of the better Christ, which is within the law, it actually transformed him and brought him from his deathbed, and now he is this thundering large flesh war machine type thing. I mean, if you want to go and read on the backstories of the communicants, and he just walks into battle now. He's got this huge sort of bloody mace and this big gun, and he's the sort of firepower and the line breaker of the team. And he carries the body of one of the other wretched who was close to him on his belt. Right, Brother Gunther was me having a bit of fun. So I basically got this soldier who's been so disfigured by the Black Grail, his face has actually has come off, and so he's got this weird system that pipes into him, and if you see on the model, his head's actually within the encasement that's outside of his body, and he uses this to navigate the battlefield. He's more of a mindless soldier. He'll just go anywhere and fight anything, sort of like a communicant, but who hasn't fully transformed. The soldiers believe that he's basically being imbibed by the Holy Spirit constantly through this machine, and that's what's perpetuating him and keeping him alive. I just thought it was a nice little touch rather than having just a standard soldier who's, you know, just there for the scrapping and like a rank and file. It gives him just something a little bit different. Right, so the wretched themselves, so these are just soldiers people who've been, as I say, infected by the Black Grail, and these are their last days, and they're basically going into suicide missions. So I've got a cool little mishmash of like various miniatures here with like pustules and growths and things, and all disfigured and whatnot. And it was just a nice little way of, within this, I can add miniatures to this as and when I want, and just swap them out if I need to, just to make something a bit different. You know, they're all really twisted and gnarly. When you look at them, you don't think, oh, this is the quote-unquote good guys. But yeah, there's something a bit cool. There's a nice aesthetic. You've got that sort of grotesqueness about it. And again, it's the fact that these are just poor, average Joe Bloggs people who have decided to take this upon themselves, have been inflicted by this horrible plague, and are still fighting on. I just thought it was a cool little narrative and a nice spin on the actual Trench Pilgrims themselves. And it was yeah, it was a good bit of fun, nice bit of kit bashing, and little things like this guy here with the barbed wire ripped through his mouth and things like that. A lot of fun, and a lot of places where I could just expand and do what I want with it. Right, so that's my take on the Trench Pilgrims, and that's what I've done with it. So this was my favourite faction, and from the very start when I started reading into the game, and I knew this was the one I was going to go for. And I've definitely spent the most time on painting wise, and then I've done a lot of kit bashing and converting on these, more so than I'd normally do. As I mentioned earlier in the video, it's not the best paint job I can do, but I think they all fit together. There's a theme there when you see them. They are a group. They're this ragtag, as I say, Colonel Schaefer's Last Chances, Kelly's Heroes type thing. They're all in this together. You know, they're the lowest of the low. The fact that they're called the Wretched by their own people. You know, these guys, men and women, are just, they're there till the end. They're going to be fighting, and it's, you know, it's only going to end one way, and it's a case of, can they do something good with the last few days of their life? But as I say, so that something a bit different. I didn't just want to do a normal painting video with these. It's painting things that I've done before on the channel, so it's, you know, it wasn't anything new. But also just to show that you can have a bit of fun. Just if you're buying a war game, and like, you know, we read all the lore in like the books and things, you can do the same sort of thing. Come up with something for yourself. Yeah, I'm not worried if there's anything there, you know, that's not exactly to the rules or whatnot, and it doesn't really bother me. I'm there to have fun. It's a game, and you know, it's your hobby. Do what you want with it, and enjoy it. But yeah, definitely recommend, if you can, write up a narrative for something. It could be anything, you know, a Space Marine chapter, the reason why you're, you know, let's say you got an orc army fantasy, whatever it might be. It's just cool to add a bit of fluff, and you'll be surprised how much that helps with the actual design process and then the painting. Because I knew I wanted these to be twisted and gnarly, so I went out there looking for very specific miniatures, because I want this group to stand out from a normal sort of Trench Pilgrim. And the fact that when you first look at them, you're like, oh, actually, what are these? And then you can see like all the little iconography and the little bits that are on the miniatures. Oh, these are technically the good guys, but they look horrific. Yeah, thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you on the next one. Cheers.